Welcome, learners.
And misunderstandings.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's a really good way to develop your understanding of those aspects of the language.
What about a standout episode? Which one would you recommend?
I think the one with the embryos is a really classic episode. It's the one where they play the quiz. And it's just a really good example of the fast-paced, witty dialogue that Friends is known for.
All right, so that's Friends. It's a fun one to watch, but also, pay attention to the language and you'll learn a lot.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to something completely different now. Let's talk about Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad.
Now, this is a show that I think really pushes the boundaries in terms of language.
It does, yeah.
It's a crime drama, and the characters are involved in some pretty dark stuff, so the language reflects that. It can be quite intense.
Yeah, there's a lot of swearing, there's violence, there's drug use. So it's definitely not a show for everyone.
But for C2 learners who are looking for a real challenge and who are interested in seeing how language can be used to create tension and suspense and to portray really complex characters, then I think Breaking Bad is definitely worth watching.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that Breaking Bad does really well is contrast the different speech styles of the characters. You've got Walter White, who is a chemistry teacher, and he's very articulate and uses a lot of sophisticated vocabulary.
Yeah.
And then you've got Jesse Pinkman, who is his former student, and his language is much more informal and slangy.
Right.
And so you get this really interesting contrast between the two of them and how they use language to express themselves.
And as the show goes on and Walter gets more and more involved in the drug trade, his language actually starts to change as well, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. He becomes much more ruthless and manipulative, and that's reflected in the way that he speaks.
Yeah, it's almost like he's adopting Jesse's language in a way.
Yeah, he does, yeah. He starts to use more slang, and he becomes much more comfortable with using threats and intimidation.
And I think the setting is also quite important in Breaking Bad. It's set in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is in the southwestern United States.
Yeah.
And so you get to hear some regional accents and some local expressions that you might not be familiar with.
Yeah, and the show also makes use of a lot of Spanish words and phrases, because it's set so close to the Mexican border.
Right.
So that's another interesting element of the language you can pick up on.
Is there a particular episode of Breaking Bad that you think really stands out in terms of the language?
I think Ozymandias is a really powerful episode. It's from season 5. It's a very dramatic episode, and the language is very intense and emotional.
All right. Well, Breaking Bad is not for the faint of heart, but if you're up for the challenge, then it's a fantastic show to watch, and you'll learn a lot about the dark side of American English.
Yeah.
Okay, let's cross the Atlantic now and head to London for our next recommendation. And of course, I'm talking about Sherlock.
Sherlock.
Now, this is a show that I think is just a gift for language learners.
It is, yeah.
Language is so rich and so witty and so fast-paced.
Yeah, and so British.
So British, yes.
Benedict Cumberbatch, who plays Sherlock, he's got this very distinctive way of speaking. He's very articulate. He uses a lot of long words. He's very quick and witty.
Yeah. He speaks in these incredible rapid-fire monologues, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. It's almost like he's thinking out loud.
And then you've got Martin Freeman as Watson, who's much more kind of down-to-earth and relatable.
Yeah. He's the kind of the everyman character.
So you get this really nice contrast between the two of them.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that makes the show so enjoyable to watch is the dynamic between Sherlock and Watson.
And it's not just the dialogue that's great. The writing is also really clever. There are all these little puns and word plays and references that you might not pick up on the first viewing.
Yeah, it's definitely a show that rewards multiple viewings.
And it's also very visually stylish, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's got this very modern, kind of edgy look to it.
And I think the setting is also really important in Sherlock. London is such an iconic city, and the show really captures the atmosphere of the place.
Yeah, and it's also very British. in terms of the humor and the cultural references.
Right.
So it's a good way to kind of immerse yourself in British culture.
Is there a particular episode that you would recommend people to start with?
I think the first episode, A Study in Pink, is a really good introduction to the show.
All right, so Sherlock is a must-watch for anyone who's interested in British English, in clever dialogue, and in just a really well-made TV show.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Okay, let's step back in time now to the 1960s and take a look at Mad Men.
Mad Men.
Now, this is a show that's all about style and sophistication.
It is, yeah.
It's set in the world of advertising, and it follows the lives of a group of advertising executives.
Yeah, and it's very much a period piece. The clothes, the music, the language, it all feels very authentic to the 1960s.
And the language is just so beautiful, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's very elegant and sophisticated.
And you get to see how advertising works, how they come up with these slogans and these campaigns.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how advertising has changed over the years. The techniques that they were using back then are very different from what we see today.
And the characters are so complex and so flawed and so interesting.
They are, yeah. They're all very human. They've all got their secrets and their desires and their failings.
And there's a lot of unspoken tension between them, isn't there?
There is. A lot of the trauma in the show comes from the relationships between the characters.
And the way that they use language to kind of manipulate each other and to get what they want.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there a particular episode that you think really captures the essence of Mad Men?
I think The Wheel is a really good one. It's the season 1 finale. And it's a very powerful episode, both emotionally and thematically.
All right, so Mad Men is a show for people who appreciate good writing, good acting, and good style.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to another show that's very stylish, but in a very different way. Let's talk about Black Mirror.
Okay.
Now, this is a show that I think is really relevant to our times.
It is, yeah.
It's a science fiction anthology series, and each episode tells a different story about the dark side of technology.
Yeah, and it's very thought-provoking. It really makes you think about the impact that technology is having on our lives and on society.
And the language in Black Mirror is really interesting because it often incorporates technical terms and futuristic concepts.
Yeah, and it can be quite challenging to keep up with sometimes because the writers are very creative with their use of language.
But I think that's part of the appeal of the show, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's definitely a show that makes you think.
And it's also visually very striking, I think.
It is, yeah. Each episode has its own very distinctive look and feel.
Is there a particular episode of Black Mirror that you would recommend to people?
I think Nosedive is a really good one. It's from season 3. And it's a very satirical episode about social media and the pressure to be popular.
All right, so Black Mirror is a show for people who like to be challenged, who like to think about the future, and who are interested in seeing how language can be used to explore new ideas.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to a show now that's set in the past, but that I think is still really relevant today.
Okay.
And that's The Crown.
Ah, The Crown.
Now, this is a historical drama about the reign of Queen Elizabeth II.
Yeah, and it's incredibly well made.
It is. The production values are amazing.
The acting is superb. The costumes, the sets, everything is just top notch.
And the language is fascinating because it gives you a glimpse into how the royal family speaks.
Yeah, it's very formal and polite, and there's a lot of emphasis on tradition and protocol.
Yeah, it's a real contrast to some of the other shows that we've been talking about.
It is, yeah.
But I think it's a really good example of how language can be used to convey power and authority.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting to see how the Queen's language has changed over the years.
Oh, absolutely.
In the early episodes, she's very young and she's still finding her feet and her language is a bit more hesitant.
Right.
But as she gets older and more experienced, she becomes much more confident and assured in her use of language.
And it's interesting to see how the other characters adjust their language depending on who they're speaking to.
Yeah, exactly. They're much more formal when they're speaking to the Queen than they are when they're speaking to each other.
Is there a particular episode of The Crown that you would recommend?
I think Hyde Park Corner is a really good one. It's from season 1.
Okay.
And it's the episode where the queen has to deal with the death of her father.
All right. So The Crown is a show for people who are interested in British history and in the royal family and in formal English.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's finish up with a show now that's a bit more down earth. Let's talk about The Office.
The Office.
Now, this is a mockumentary comedy set in a paper company in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and it's hilarious.
It is. It's so funny. And the characters are just so relatable.
Yeah, they have very kind of ordinary people with ordinary problems.
But they're also really quirky and well-developed.
Yeah, and the show does a great job of kind of satirizing office culture.
Oh, absolutely.
All of the kind of penny rivalries and the awkward social interactions and the just the general absurdity of working in an office.
And the language in The Office is really interesting because it's a mix of kind of everyday conversational English and an office jargon.
Yeah, and there's a lot of improvisation as well. The actors were given a lot of freedom to kind of ad lib and come up with their own lines.
So it feels very natural and very spontaneous.
It does. Yeah.
Is there a particular episode of The Office that you would recommend?
I think Dinner Party is a really classic episode. It's from season 4.
Okay.
And it's just a really good example of the show's cringe humor.
All right. So The Office is a show for people who like to laugh, who like to cringe, and who like to see how ordinary people use language in everyday situations.
Yeah, definitely.
So there you have it, a selection of some of the best TV series for C2 learners.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just a small sample. Of course, there are so many other great shows out there, but hopefully this has given you some ideas of what to watch.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is to find something that you enjoy watching.
Absolutely.
If you're not enjoying it, then you're not going to learn anything from it.
So don't force yourself to watch something that you don't like just because you think it's good for your English.
Yeah, exactly.
Find something that you genuinely find entertaining, and then just sit back and relax and enjoy the show.
And pay attention to the language.
Yeah, try to notice the different ways that the characters use language and try to think about how you could use those same techniques in your own speaking and writing.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to pause and rewind and look up words that you don't understand.
Absolutely.
The more you engage with the language, the more you'll learn.
There you have it. Use TV series to boost your English to the next level. I mean, it's fun, it's effective, and it's a great excuse to watch more TV.
What's not to like?
Exactly. So what are you waiting for? Get out there and start watching.
Yeah, happy watching.
All right. Well, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm your host, Mike, and today we're diving deep into using audiobooks to learn English.
Wonderful.
And joining me is language learning expert Sarah.
Hi, everyone.
Sarah, I'm a big audiobook fan, but I've always thought of them as entertainment, not really like a learning tool.
Right.
How can we actually use them to boost fluency?
That's a great question, Mike, and it's a common misconception. Audiobooks are so much more than just passive listening. They can be incredibly powerful for improving your English, no matter what level you're starting from.
Okay, so let's unpack that. What's the first step? Is it just about picking any audiobook and pressing play?
Well, not quite. Just like you wouldn't train for a marathon by running 26 miles on day 1, you need an audiobook that matches your English level.
Makes sense.
Starting with something too complex can be discouraging, while something too simple might not challenge you enough.
So finding that sweet spot is key. What about active versus passive listening? Is it better to be fully focused, or can I just have the audiobook on in the background while I'm doing other things?
Both approaches have their benefits. Active listening is like laser focus, no distractions, maybe even following along with the text if you have it.
Okay.
It's about really absorbing the pronunciation, intonation, and grammar.
So it's like an intense workout for your listening skills.
Exactly. Now, passive listening is more about immersing yourself in the sounds of English. Think doing chores, walking, or even driving, as long as it's safe, of course. It helps train your ear to the natural rhythm and flow of the language.
I love that idea of training your ear. It makes the learning process feel more natural, almost effortless.
Exactly. And you can always switch back and forth between active and passive listening depending on your mood, your time, and what you want to achieve.
Okay, so we've chosen our audiobook and we're being strategic about our listening, but what about vocabulary? Audiobooks are packed with new words. How can we actually make those words stick?
That's where active engagement comes in. Repetition is key. When you hear a new word, don't just let it fly by. Rewind.
Okay.
Try to guess the meaning from the context. And then, this is crucial, write it down. Maybe create flashcards, keep a vocabulary journal, or use a language learning app.
Right.
Then, the most important step, use the new word.
Use it.
Try to incorporate it into your own speaking and writing.
You're so right about repetition. I used to keep a vocabulary notebook while listening to audiobooks, and it really helped. But isn't it overwhelming to try and learn so many new words at once? How do we prioritize?
That's a really good point. You don't need to learn every single new word. Focus on words that seem relevant to your interests or that come up frequently.
Okay.
And remember, quality over quantity. It's better to learn a few words well than to superficially memorize a long list.
That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned pronunciation earlier, and I've always been a bit self-conscious about my accent. Can audiobooks actually help with that?
Absolutely. Listening to different narrators with various accents is like giving your ears a workout and recognizing different ways